Where do you learn to make a banana split?
Sunday school. That one's lame.
Fuck. In my defense, I didn't know that one was common. I didn't know. I had.
I mean, it popped into my head. I never heard the joke before, but it just popped into my head immediately.
You're just very good at inferencing. You passed inferencing in elementary school with flying colors.
Bran and I are beefing already because there was a post on X or Twitter, whatever, of him showing the gun show. So I figured he was gonna have the gun show. So I also brought the gun show.
Pat referring to the sleeveless NASCAR shirt he's rocking right now. Yeah, I was wearing a sleeveless shirt as part of a skit that I was recording. I took the shirt off and put on my normal shirt shortly after. I don't know where Pat got the idea that I was remaining in that, but nonetheless, we're here. And Pat's
if I had guns
tasty.
like that, I would wear cut off all the time.
I'm gonna cut the sleeves. I'll cut the sleeves off this, even though this shirt's brand new. Folks, welcome back to Brand Coverage. I'm Brandon Carney alongside Pat Gustafson. Guys, we have a big show for you today, a fun show for you today. Obviously, we've got our news. We've got our Mount Busmore and Mount Studmore. But we also have a fun little segment. We're going to do a little back and forth rest of season draft. Pat and I are just going to alternate picking essentially our ideal fantasy teams for the rest of the year. Give you guys an idea of which players we believe are the absolute tippy-top best assets to own for the rest of the fantasy season, taking into account, obviously what they've done so far, but also strength of schedule the rest of the way, which is a very important factor if you're trying to, not just have a good record in your regular season, but make a push in the playoffs. Also, Pat and I made a couple trades this week, so there is some stuff to discuss.
One better than the other.
I think there will be some controversy, but I am here to defend myself and be transparent. But let's get into it, Pat. I'm not going to hit the news button until we go over our trades, because I don't personally think our trades are quite as big of news as some of this other stuff. But I'll go over my trade first, because I think our audience is going to get a kick out of this one. Look, let me set the stage for you, right? All week I'm trying to figure out a sort of win now move, because I was put in a position where, because of my running back depth or lack thereof, I was going to have to start Zach Moss again, or a desperation play of Blake Corum or Dearness Johnson or whatever Pat's play in the world's regular size.
You weren't going to have Dearness Johnson. I have Dearness Johnson.
I know. Basically, I'll cut to the chase. No, I'll cut to the chase. I traded Jonathan Taylor for J.K. Dobbins. Now, before the Boo Birds come out and attack me, there is one aspect of our league in particular, Pat, that made me do this more than any other. And it was, we are still, as a 12-team fantasy league, only getting 4 teams into the playoffs. And historically, now that we've gone to 13 regular season weeks, if you lose 5 games in the regular season, you're on the chopping block. Like 8-5. Oh,
I know.
As you went 8-5 last year and missed the playoffs, So 8-5 might get you in, it might not. I was sitting here at 3-3 this week. Jonathan Taylor not going to play, playing against a team that is right there, kind of in this muddied sort of playoff mix with me, and I'm like, I can't afford to lose this week. I can't, because then I'm putting myself in a bad position for tiebreakers. I'm putting myself in a position where I can only lose one more game the rest of the way. And even if my team gets back to like early season, putting up 110 plus points on a regular basis, luck can just strike me, and then I lose another game and I'm out of the playoffs. So I thought this move made sense given the position I was in. I would not advocate for anybody else to trade Jonathan Taylor for J.K. Dobbins, but I also have Kamani Vidal. The Chargers' running back strength of schedule the next few weeks is pretty good. I felt it was a move I absolutely needed to make. Otherwise, I was not going to make the playoffs, and that's the whole goal. Yes, sitting here now this morning, would I rather have Jonathan Taylor on my team knowing he's probably going to play this week? Absolutely, obviously, but it's a week-by-week game, and if you stay complacent for too long, you're not going to make the playoffs, and what are we fucking doing this for? So that was my trade, Jonathan Taylor for J.K. Dobbins, and I will accept an appropriate level of roasting for that, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I was a bit blindsided by it, as we had been discussing fucking CD Lamb for Jonathan Taylor. I would have gladly given you Najee. I would have gladly given you Najee Harris for him. It seems that that's what the standards were.
Here's the thing, the other benefit of this deal. transparently, was I sent Jonathan Taylor to a team that is not going to make the playoffs in our league. That team is 1-6 now after another loss this week.
Too.
And so obviously he has the opportunity over the next couple weeks to trade Jonathan Taylor to someone else should he so choose. But at the time, I was like, okay, I'm sending JT to a guy that not only have I already played, but who is going to hopefully wreak havoc on these other teams for me and try to make things messy. Because quite frankly, his team, despite being 1-6, is pretty good. I mean, lost Mike Evans last night, but it's not 1-6 bad.
No,
not at all. It's got Joe Mixon. It's got Jonathan Taylor now. I mean, it's pretty good.
Give me Joe Mixon. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so it is what it is. But that's my trade, Pat. How are you feeling about your deal?
I don't want a victory lap too hard after the first week. But let's just put it this way, that Kareem Hunt and Puka Nacua now belong to my team in favor of Jaden Reed, who had the same number of fantasy points as Kareem Hunt had touchdowns. I got a text. I got a text from that owner today who's like, 1 week rental over, and it was him giving me something to give Puka back.
Yeah.
And then he wished me to do some other unfavorable things to him.
Yeah. Unsavory.
And,
this is a family program.
You never, nothing like that. Well, actually, yeah, one of them was like that. But
I would assume.
But yeah, as my team, who had three really strong wide receivers and Marvin Harrison Jr., and my RB2 this week was going to be worse than Brand's. It was going to be, granted, Tyler Goodson, who turned out to have a nice day, but my RB2 is non-existent. Even when Jerome Ford's healthy, Nick Chubb is back, I'm cooked. So I needed a running back bad. I get Kareem Hunt, and Jaden Reed's big weeks, wide receiver 4 tag, came in the clutch there, scooping Puka, who could honestly be back in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. So, now looking at a team with Hunt and Harris, I like that. And then I'm still in a position, if they fucking throw Marvin Harrison the football, that I still have 4 really good wide receivers that I could turn into, say, Jonathan Taylor now.
Right. I will hopefully not see that come to pass.
And George Kittle. But my quarterback play has been literal dog shit because I picked Patrick Mahomes, who, as you had an interesting tweet today where it was quarterbacks with more interceptions than touchdowns, and it was just a list of absolute bums. And I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes, because he's an absolute bum right now.
Right. Yeah.
In spite of leading his team to 6-0. And probably still somehow in the MVP conversation, but that's beside the point.
He better. I mean, Lamar Jackson is hopefully setting himself apart in that combo. But yeah, look, I think that deal for you, it's not going to look as bad every week, as one-sided every week as it does this week.
No, Jaden Reed has better weeks ahead.
Jaden Reed will be fine, but it definitely, as of right now, I mean, Kareem Hunt's continuing to put up like top 5 running back numbers, and Puka has had his practice window opened for this week, so his return is somewhat imminent over these next couple of weeks.
Not to jump too far ahead, but if they trade Cooper Kupp, then Puka's going to get 15 targets a game.
Yeah, that will be interesting.
And I'll never have to see Marvin Harrison's face in my lineup again. 2nd round pick, woo!
Oh my God, he's been brutal. All right,
I'm 5-2, and 2 of my first 4 round picks have been useless. Woo!
I think that's everybody at this point. All right, let's get into the actual news of the week.
Good evening. I'm Ron Burgundy, and this is what's happening in your world tonight.
R.I.P. Deshaun Watson, you absolute fucking bum. Goodbye, good night. I hope to never hear from you again. This injury, I've never seen anything quite like this, Pat. Because quite honestly, I was in disbelief when I saw it happen. Because I was like, karma struck? There's no way that this guy who's been lambasted for weeks, for months, for years, actually just suffered the most immediate season-ending brutal injury that a player can suffer. And he did. And you saw it clear as day. I mean, well, he might come back eventually. But Deshaun, you see it pop, and it's like, I don't want to be gross. I've never been a person that's been like this with any other player, but this man is the exception of all exceptions. I was like, fuck yeah. Fuck you. Good. Like, this guy, man, I don't wish harm on any other athlete. I would never wish harm on anybody to this level. But this guy is an asshole and deserves it. So the Browns, are going to be without Deshaun Watson now, which we know for their offense is going to be beneficial because this guy could not do jack shit. And it seems like although they surprisingly had activated Dorian Thompson-Robinson for that game and had Jameis as their third emergency quarterback who did come into play later. Yeah. But now it's looking like DTR, he got hurt at the end of that game actually, which is why Jameis came in. And now they're rolling into this week with Jameis and the boy Bailey Zappi signed off the Chiefs practice squad. So, look, if they do the logical thing and go with Jameis,
hope so.
I would hope so too. This is beneficial for everybody on their offense. It's especially good for the likes of David Njoku, who's certainly the most proven weapon on this team. But then you've got other guys. It's Cedric Tillman at this point. I think I like better as a flyer than Jerry Jeudy, just because Jerry Jeudy, he's just not it, man. We've tried to give him opportunity after opportunity, and I don't think he's good enough to provide you consistent enough value for him to really be worth a waiver pickup at this point. I mean, speculate if you really want, but I would rather speculate on Cedric Tillman, who had a very nice game in totality this past week. So, yeah, look, the Browns are going to be maybe a little more conducive for fantasy success now that Deshaun is out of the picture. I think it's beneficial for Nick Chubb. It's beneficial for everybody out there. Shout out Nick Chubb, by the way, got into the end zone in his first game back. That was awesome to see.
Excellent efficiency,
Yep, and then I think for Jameis, yeah, he was awesome. And then for Jameis himself, he's probably a streamer-level quarterback here and there. I mean, I don't know how comfortable I would be. I'm rostering the Ravens defense and throwing them out there this week. I don't know how comfortable I'd be throwing Jameis out there against, the Cleveland Browns, against the Baltimore Ravens, because we know he's as mistake-prone as he is big play-prone. But, I mean, this is a guy, I saw a stat, he averages over his last some odd starts like 260 or 280 yards a game. He throws for quite a few yards. This is not going to be...
Mahomes has combined for that all year.
This isn't going to be a stagnant offense. So if you're looking for a guy, he's the ultimate range of outcomes quarterback. So I think, there will probably be some weeks ahead where he is certainly a viable streamer. Let me take a look at the Browns' actual upcoming schedule just to get a full beat on this. So their upcoming
the Steelers
games
twice, don't they?
So yes, but we've got a little bit until. So I mean, we got the Ravens, then the Chargers, then a bye, then the Saints, Steelers. Oh, this is a tough schedule. Saints,
those are four solid defenses you've already listed.
So Steelers, Broncos, Steelers, Chiefs. Yeah, it's rough out here. But just from a he's going to chuck it downfield no matter what the defense is perspective, I think you could do worse. And if you have him at least in a super flex format, definitely a guy worth picking up. But yeah, look, good news for all the Browns players.
Well, with how bad the quarterback position has been, too, with, a guy being drafted as the QB3, Patrick Mahomes, being unplayable right now. And, with the likes of other streamers like Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield stock takes a huge hit now, being without his top two targets for at least 2 weeks. In terms of Mike Evans, we know Godwin, But it's hard. It's rough out there to be someone that streams QBs with just the lack of consistency. I mean, a guy like Geno Smith has been your savior, and he just throws up 17 points, and you brush your hands off, move to next week.
As a Stroud owner, I'd kill for 17 points.
Well, that's I mean, look at Stroud, and I do a league where we redraft weekly, and looking at the quarterback performance, it's even like Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen. Their eggs have been eggs.
Yeah,
scrambled. Even Lamar, right? Lamar had that one really bad game too. So no one's safe from it. So you could do a lot worse than Jameis, if you're desperate, which I imagine a lot of people are, especially because now Jaden Daniels could miss time. Anthony Richardson is absolutely useless from a fantasy perspective. So
he's been awful.
With bye weeks, with injuries, there's no byes this week, but in the future, yeah, Jameis is going to be owned on a lot of teams. And yeah, I don't think I quite had the same Deshaun Watson reaction to you. It was more so oh no. Anyway, another
right.
Yeah, but don't tell LeBron that. Don't tell LeBron.
No, Joe.
Or Jameis. That's my man. I'm gonna back him up. I'm gonna lift him up. It's It's like the dog sideways dog meme, Jameis. It's huh. But yeah, rest in piss, bozo.
Yeah, I can't with the people that are out defending it, man. It's wild. I understand.
It's like LeBron when he harasses 30 women. LeBron when someone makes fun.
Yeah, dude, it's there's exceptions to everything, right? Like we all
Absolutely.
know that 99.9999% of the time you are not celebrating an athlete tearing their Achilles. If it doesn't matter if he's playing for your biggest rival, it doesn't matter if he has political views you disagree with, it doesn't matter anything. But if he sexually assaulted 24 different women, yeah, I'm kind of happy he can fuck off. So I don't care. I feel zero remorse. Get the fuck off my screen.
It's just so funny that they're going to get better because of this. Like David Njoku was probably
100%.
like a borderline top 5, possibly even like guaranteed, especially getting rid of Amari Cooper too.
Yeah.
We've seen that offense be consolidated to him with Joe Flacco last year. I don't see why Jameis won't do the same thing. Like I saw, and I think he's, the number of leagues he's available in isn't a lot, but it should be 0. It should, after waivers clear tomorrow, it should be 0.
Yeah, 100%. Moving on, we've got more quarterback news within that division. Pat, Russell Wilson takes Justin Fields' job and does it quite well. And now I was not expecting that. So through the first...
Especially after the first half, man.
Through the first couple drives of that game, it was looking pretty awful. And it was like, Mike Tomlin, what are you doing? I fired off a tweet like Fields must have fucked Tomlin's mom or something to get a bench like this. And then... Russell Wilson did something that just seems so simple, but that Justin Fields was unwilling to do for whatever reason, and that's just throw the ball up to George Pickens. Because for all the credit that Russ, and I tweeted this too, for all the credit that Russ gets for his deep ball, he's known for the rainbow ball, and he was so good at that in Seattle. He was not throwing a good deep ball in the sense that he was like leading George Pickens and hitting him in stride. He was just throwing it up and giving the guy a chance. The first deep completion to George Pickens literally looked like a fucking punt. Like it was just, I'm going to throw it up. Pickens had to completely stop in his tracks, but he went up and get it because George Pickens, for all of his flaws, might be the best contested catch receiver in football. He's a freak athlete. That one skill he may be better at than basically anybody in football. And Russ leveraged that. He was willing to give him those shots. Fields just, for whatever reason, wasn't, which is funny because the deep ball was not like a weakness for Fields, but I think Fields was just too risk averse, and that was what Mike Tomlin ultimately benched him for. Yeah, I mean, you can't, when you have a receiver like George Pickens, I understand wanting a quarterback out there that's going to give him those chances, gave them those chances. They immediately scored the most points they have all season, 37 on the Jets, not a slouch defense by any stretch of the imagination. So the question, what does this mean for the rest of the offense? I think if you're a George Pickens owner, you're thrilled. You can start him now with a level of confidence. I still don't love the idea of having to bank on these jump balls happening every single week, but you at least know they're in the cards now.
Yeah,
and they're possible. So
exactly.
I mean, go ahead.
One of the things that we talked about too was like, he loves throwing to running backs. One running back catch. Yeah. Jalen Warren had one catch. Najee Harris, I believe, only had one target. But still, like, Najee was able to get 100 yards and a touchdown. Second straight week he's done that. So, like, that elevates the whole offense. Jalen Warren played 50% of the snaps. I think he only had, like, 9 points, but that's not bad for a backup. And he becomes an absolutely premium handcuff if something were to happen to Najee Harris, knock on the wood everywhere. But yeah, Jalen Warren, we'll talk about our waiver guys later, but Jalen Warren's a guy that's going to be relevant. And I guess Pat Freiermuth, too, just because there's really no wide receiver 2 there still. So
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly possible. We've talked plenty on this show about Pat Freiermuth and just the tight end rotation that the Steelers employ. I mean, we saw a few decent glimpses of Darnell Washington, in this game as well. So it's not like Pat Freiermuth is going to go. Yeah, oh my God, he's a goddamn refrigerator. So it's not like Washington's going to go away. It's not like the situation's changing that much for Freiermuth from a snaps perspective, but. Certainly more quality looks, we think, possibly from Russell Wilson. And, really, other than the slow start and shaking the rust off, really as good of a debut as you could hope for Russell Wilson against this Jets defense.
And the other thing I said last week about Najee Harris was that now he won't get vultured at the goal line anymore. I almost threw my TV out the window that wouldn't have fit out the window when Russ dove for that. I was furious.
Yeah. So, look, the other question we have to ask here now, right, is a lot of people were relying on Justin Fields as their fantasy quarterback for up to this point in the season. Is Russell Wilson a streamer fantasy quarterback? And I think Without a doubt he is. Because, Pat, if you actually take a look at what he did in Denver last year, it wasn't that bad. Like, it really wasn't. Throughout the entire season, I'm looking at his fantasy numbers, and he played every game up until week 16. Week 16 against the Patriots was his final game before they benched him in that sort of weird situation for Jarrett Stidham. Russ only had 2 games, would you believe this? Or, excuse me, 3 games all season out of 15 games below 15 fantasy points. Only 3 games below 15 fantasy points. Other than that, he was giving you in the teens, and he threw in a couple of 26, 22, 24 fantasy points. Like, he wasn't a slouch. And we're talking about how desolate the quarterback market is. I think you could do worse than Russell Wilson, at least in the right matchups. I mean, I'm looking at the bad games he had last year with Denver. You had on the road at Kansas City. Well, you probably could have seen that one coming. You had 14 points. This one was at home versus the Vikings. That one's that's still not a complete catastrophe. And the 13.9 that was at home versus Green Bay. Again, not good, but not a complete catastrophe like a CJ Stroud 5 points was from this week. So I think, especially in this offense that might be a little more functional than, say, Denver's was last year, I don't think it's the worst option. I mean, there's probably better options out there in general. But, like, Russ's schedule coming up, they got the Giants this week. Then they're on bye. Then they got the Commanders. Then they got the Ravens, which, it's the Ravens, but the Steelers are at home, and the Ravens have allowed a decent amount through the air this year. Then the Browns, the Bengals, the Browns, the Eagles. Like, you can play this guy. I'm not saying he's a priority. I'm not saying, Russell Wilson, league-winning quarterback. But, like, for people like me who are exploring their options at this point, at least for certain matchups, I don't think this is a guy you should write off completely. I think he's certainly in the mix.
Jameis or Russ, who would you rather have?
Russ. I think Russ's floor is a lot higher than Jameis.
That's what I was going to say. I think Jameis does have the higher ceiling, but I think Russ is just in a better offensive system. Sorry to give Arthur Smith an ounce of credit, but I think Russ is going to hurt you less than Jameis might.
Here's the thing, like Russ, Arthur Smith, I hate the guy. I still hate his guts. I still think he's kind of an idiot, but he had Desmond Ridder. And Desmond Ridder straight up can't throw the ball. Like Russ, to a degree, can still pass the ball a little bit. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
That's Raider legend
You're a Desmond Ridder stan now that he's going to be starting for the Las Vegas Raiders.
I fucking hope not.
Fucking luck with that, bud. Yeah, have fun with that one. All right. On the other side of the Steelers and their season high in points was the New York Jets, who, folks, I have important news breaking coming into the BenchwarmerBran newsroom. The Jets still fucking stink. Getting Davante Adams
forever.
At this point, getting Davante Adams, in fact, did not fix their offensive line. It did not fix their defense that apparently has holes in it. It did not fix their questionable offensive play calling. It added a shiny new piece to their offense that did essentially nothing. So unless Aaron Rodgers can find some more of his buddies to fill some more of these gaps, I don't know what Jermichael Finley's up to these days. Maybe he can play some linebacker.
I saw Geronimo Allison name drop. It was
let's get
John
Allison
Kuhn,
in here.
Get him in there.
Yep. Who was that receiver that he really liked? The white guy. Where's Jeff Janis at?
Jake
Jeff
Kumaro.
Janis out here. Jake Kumaro too.
Yeah.
That's who I was trying to think of. Let's get all these guys in there and see if maybe you add enough of these guys in there, the Jets won't be 2-5. So look, here's my thing with the Jets. I think from a real life perspective, like this is a team that I'm done having playoff expectations for. I don't think they are operating well enough to give me enough hope that that's going to happen. But from a fantasy perspective, like I think Breece Hall is going to be fine. Breece Hall had a nice game. I think
he's starting to look like what you paid for.
He is. Breece Hall's last 2 games, 23.1, 19.4, really just a short stint of what the fuck's going on against the Broncos and the Vikings. But against the Bills and the Steelers, he was great. I think Breece Hall's going to be just fine. The receivers make me a little nervous because now you've got 2 guys kind of fighting for targets in an offense that has not shown itself to be conducive enough to support 2 wide receivers. I think the run game will always be good enough because it's going to go through Breece Hall, but the receiving game, you're still starting both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson, but I don't know that I'm expecting anything other than like mid to low end wide receiver 2 production, if that, on a given week.
I certainly believe in Adams more. I certainly believe in Adams more. But that Garrett Wilson doink off the hands that led to that pick was bad.
Off his chest, it was bad. Right in the numbers.
That was bad.
Right in the
like, I mean, yeah, and I'm certainly more confident in Devontae Adams just because, one, he's still the better player. Garrett Wilson's very good. He's still the better player, and he's Aaron Rodgers' roommate. So, like, you know, you've got to think. But, yeah, the passing volume just hasn't really been there. I think Aaron Rodgers probably needs to look in the mirror a little bit. Something I don't think he's ever done.
We're at the blame the media portion of the season, Pat. That's where we're at. He's deflecting now. So
you're gonna run out of scapegoats. Poor fucking Mike Williams, man. The guy goes out there and gets clocked, and Rodgers like, "Yup, bad route." Which I mean, I think he's right, but like, I think Rodgers was right. But like, come on, dude.
Mike Williams is about to be a Charger in about 2 weeks. I've already got the jersey swaps cooked up. If you've never
Raider,
seen a Chargers jersey before,
oh, there you go, perfect. But yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is obviously not a viable fantasy quarterback, and probably just with the Achilles and age, he's not Aaron Rodgers anymore. But he still parades around like he's Aaron Rodgers. You know, you could say it like a guy like Tom Brady. Tom Brady was Tom Brady until the day he retired. He could probably still go out there and be Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers cannot be Aaron Rodgers right now.
I think my biggest thing, and why I'm realizing like Tom Brady, obviously other than the fact that he is the greatest quarterback of all time and takes care of his body like an absolute freak, the reason he had the longevity he had is because he never had to change his play style. And I'm not saying Rodgers has changed his play style drastically, but like this is a guy who you used to see move around quite a bit. Like this was a guy who was running at like an above average level at the time, at least. Now if he ran at that level, that's probably not above average because we have so many more mobile quarterbacks. But like, if the Achilles injury did anything, I think, and along with the age, probably sapped his mobility, which is thus, I think, affecting probably the decision-making, because we're seeing him make some weird decisions where it's like maybe in those cases he would have just taken off, and now that he knows he can't, he's like, oh, fuck, I got to try to fit this ball in there. Like, we're seeing some uncharacteristic mental lapses from Rodgers, and I don't know that they're going to stop. So, look, it's not looking great for the Jets overall. If you're a Breece Hall owner, you're fine. If you're an Adams or Wilson owner, you know, you're still starting them. It's just, this isn't going to be the Jets offense that like you envisioned when you made the argument for Garrett Wilson as like a back end first round pick before the season started. That they're just never going to hit that ceiling. Jets are going to fucking Jets. It is what it is. Okay. In the AFC East as well, Pat, we have some more quarterback news. Tua Tagovailoa is set to return. Thank goodness for every Dolphins weapon, because they have all just been stuck in neutral since he went out. Very excited as a Devon Achane owner to see him resume his rapport with Tua as essentially a receiver, more or less, than a running back. And then obviously Tyreek Hill owners out there, you guys have to be thrilled. Jalen Waddle owners, you can finally brush the cobwebs off of him and take him off your bench. This is a big, big boon for the entire Dolphins offense. The only thing I want to say about it is Tua is kind of showing his colors a little bit as kind of an idiot, in my opinion. He's explaining why he's coming back, and he's said all these things that just show he has no intention of like taking care of himself at this point. And this is not about like, so he said he's not going to wear a Guardian cap, which like questionable. I don't know why you wouldn't do that, but either way, I understand Guardian caps are largely like more effective for like linemen and defensive players and stuff, because that's just what they were designed for. Tua is using a helmet, I believe, that still mitigates concussions more than like your standard helmet. But just talking about like why he's coming back and, you know, what went into that decision-making process, he was like, every player that goes out there assumes a risk of injury, and like I love football. I you know, this is the game I love, and I'm gonna keep playing it, and I'm accepting that risk. And I just don't like that he's painting it as like this is the same as any sort of other injury risk. Like this is the same as going out there and risking, you know, what happened to, unfortunately, you know, Chris Godwin last night or Mike Evans or those kind of injuries. He's treating it like this isn't something that every head injury that he continues to take is going to just destroy his quality of life by age 40. And I think he's drastically overlooking that. And so, you know, it just doesn't strike me as like, he received certain info from doctors that tells him, you know, you're okay, like it's going to be fine. This tells me like he's basically coming out and saying, I don't care what happens to me. I want to keep playing football because I don't know what else to do. So I don't know. It's just, it doesn't come across like he's a super thoughtful guy about it to me. And I'm just like, look, man, I hope it works out for you. But like, I see where this is heading, and it's not pretty, 15 years from now.
And I mean, for Tua himself, I guess back to fantasy, not back to reality. He's available in almost 75% of leagues on ESPN leagues.
Yep.
He should absolutely, I think you could start him this week. Honestly, I'm starting him.
Yep.
I'm in a dynasty league. I'm keeping Caleb Williams on the taxi squad because I think I could start Tua, and huge for Tyreek Hill. He was bordering on unstartable, which is insane for the guy that a lot of people thought was the number two. Sorry, I just forget McCaffrey exists for some reason. But the number 2 overall player, a lot of people thought he was, to just be borderline unplayable. This will be huge for him. I'm not we'll do our rest of season draft. I may not be as eager about him as I am some of these other top guys, just because, who knows? Hopefully Tua hasn't really missed a beat, but it's great for Achane. It's great for everyone except Jonnu Smith, because Jonnu Smith has had 8 or more targets the last 2 games. And, I think he's worth a mention in terms of a tight end streamer, just because why not? Is that a case of Tyler Huntley just not being able to throw the ball to anywhere except 3 feet in front of him where Jonnu Smith is? This thing probably, but
maybe
give
not.
it a week or two. Give it a week or two, and if that's the case, send him back to waivers. But yeah, this is going to be good all around for a team that, like we talked about too, is still relatively in the hunt here. They can still make the playoffs here.
Yeah, quite frankly, Tua coming back is and the subsequent Achane production, whatever ends up happening, this is going to determine whether my team is going to do anything in fantasy this year. Because if he can get back to being an actual RB1 in fantasy, then I'm not cooked, and I might actually be able to compete here if a couple other things break my way. If he continues to just be 9 points a game, max, I'm fucked. So hopefully everything does
3 acting like he's 0-7.
I have the 3rd least points total.
Good defense.
Great defense. That's a good point. All right. Last piece of news before we get into Mount Studmore and Mount Bustmore, and then our rest of season draft. Jamison Williams suspended 2 games for performance-enhancing substances.
They weren't working.
I was going to say, hilarious timing for this, given this week's production.
He should have been suspended for that. He almost got me guillotined.
Maybe he was. Maybe that was what it actually was. It's a ghost suspension for sucking. I think it was, 1 catch for -4 yards. Pretty bad performance from Jamison Williams. So if you're a JMO owner, you're going to be without him for the next 2 weeks. I think the biggest beneficiary here is going to be Sam Laporta.
I'd hope so.
He has been just non-existent this year. He has a 10% target share total, which is just unfathomable for a guy that was as good as he was last year. And I think maybe, I think you're probably going to get a nice little 2-week stretch here now out of Sam Laporta. And maybe if you're a Laporta owner, maybe this continues on after that. Maybe the momentum just carries over. But at the very least, enjoy your Laporta honeymoon, because I think it's about to be a lot better for him this week.
Or Amon-Ra just gets 20 targets a game.
Yeah, but that happened last year, too.
Or they run the ball 50
and Laporta
times
was
a game.
fine. Yeah, but they did that last year, too. So, I think it'll be better.
I think Laporta will be fine. And yet, now this just kind of keeps the temptation away from JMO. You're not going to have to worry about, is this the boom or bust week? Because, God, he was absolutely useless. And, Mount Bustmore, there were a lot of other wide receivers that were absolutely useless this week, and yet he still took the cake.
Yeah. All right, let's get into Mount Studmore and Mount Bustmore. So on Mount Studmore, this is our, how they have the Captain Crunch, oops, all berries. This is oops, all running backs for Mount Studmore this week. And that's just how this week went. Jahmyr Gibbs leads the way with 30 points. One of the few players that now, I mean, I guess everybody on Mount Studmore was, really good for you this week. But one of the few guys that had an actual 30-point outing and just absolutely carried you, especially as an early round pick. He had a great week. He did some of his work in the time period where David Montgomery exited the game. But either way, I think he still would have had a very nice day. David Montgomery does appear to be healthy. So, I was when he first went down, I was oh man, Gibbs is about to be just RB1 overall for the next month if this is serious for Montgomery. But at the very least, he popped off and helped you greatly this week. Javonte Williams on Thursday Night Football in that game that I was expecting to be completely gross, and it was, just in maybe a different way than I anticipated. 24.6 points from Javonte Williams. I don't know whether to expect that going forward. Obviously not 24.6, but this was a guy that we've like written off and then written back on like a few times throughout both the preseason and the regular season. I mean, look, just last week against the Chargers, 6 carries for 23 yards, 3 catches for 13 yards, en route to 3.1 fantasy points, and then 24.6 this past week. I think this is probably more of an anomaly than not, but at the very least, you're feeling good about the game against the Panthers this upcoming week.
Yeah, I think you could pretty comfortably start him. In the long run, is Javonte Williams someone that I am excited to own? No.
No, definitely not. Somehow, not the most unexpected name on Mount Studmore, though, Javonte Williams. The most unexpected name has to be a member of the three-headed monster of running backs in Tampa Bay. And it's the grossest one. It's Rachaad White, the man I have slandered endlessly for the better part of 2 years, decided to go vintage Rachaad White. And by vintage Rachaad White, I mean stack up a lot of fantasy points in essentially garbage time. But hey, the points count all the same. 26.1 fantasy points from Rachaad White, mostly on the back of the receiving game. 6 catches for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, in addition to 10 carries for 40 yards on the ground. Rachaad is a guy that you're depending where based on where you drafted him, you're still not going to get value out of him. But like now, not to just overreact to this game, but I think he's startable now as a flex because of the injuries to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think he's going to continue to be involved as a receiver, as the most adept pass catching back in this running back room. Again, much like Javonte Williams, 26.1, not what I'm expecting going forward, but at least startable production, I could see that, which we haven't really gotten out of the past month and a half from him.
Yeah, I mean, he had about the same touches as Bucky Irving, and he was still more efficient. Bucky Irving got the rushing touchdown, and Sean Tucker actually looked pretty good, but only got 5 carries compared to White's 10. So, as much of a three-headed monster it's going to be, it's a three-headed monster, but Rachaad White's head is just sticking out a little further.
Right. Yep, yeah, it's surprisingly, he's back from the dead, so if you have Rachaad White, you can actually plug him in and feel, I think, decent about it going forward. And the last running back on here, we've got Tank Bigsby. Absolutely terrorized my New England Patriots on foreign soil. I was very upset. 23.8 points, 26 carries for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. Absolutely nothing through the air. In fact, had a pretty awful drop. So look, Stonehands over here is not going to be giving you much in the receiving game, but rushing wise, I saw somebody put this perfectly. Like Doug Peterson keeps saying, Travis Etienne's not losing his job. Travis Etienne's not losing his job. But Doug Peterson has to know that he's losing his job.
Yeah.
Unless, as soon as he stops going to Tank Bigsby, he's losing his job. So I don't see him going away from Tank. The more he leans on Tank Bigsby, the longer Peterson gets to keep his job. Now, I don't know if he wants to keep his job. I'm assuming he does, even though he seems checked out at certain times this year with some of his comments. But look, they can't go away from Tank Bigsby. The 26 for 118, this guy's looked like the best pure rusher on this team for the entire season. You are feeling pretty good if you're a Tank Bigsby owner, and you are going to continue to start him. Now, Mount Bustmore. I am doing a dual Mount Bustmore, just shove their heads together because they both stunk. It is the Texans combo, the stack that I was hoping would give me, 30 points at least. That was kind of the hope. CJ Stroud and Tank Dell combined. CJ Stroud and Tank Dell combined for a whopping 5.34, and all 5.34 were CJ Stroud, Tank Dell throwing up a nice big donut for us. God, this was brutal.
Yeah.
Look, I know the Packers defense is good, but they're not that good that you were expecting that kind of outcome. The pass rush just gave CJ Stroud absolutely no time, and meanwhile, they were letting Joe Mixon do whatever he wanted on the ground, leaving absolutely nothing for the passing game. I think better days are ahead. I'm still confidently starting this stack this week against the Colts, but this was a gross showing.
It's like they got carried that hard by Joe Mixon and Kaimi Fairbairn that they basically almost won the game. That was the part that was lost on me, at the end, looking at them 80, what yards?
Yeah.
How they hung in that game, just goes to show that this is a good team, but this is not, it can't be, right? I know they don't have Nico Collins, but that can't happen again, can it?
I don't think so. I am starting to take note of CJ Stroud's splits, both home and away, because they're pretty stark, especially this year. So in home games this year, CJ Stroud has gone for let's see, 14.3, 23.5, 15.94. Then on the road against the Colts, he had 18.6. I mean, that's the Colts. And then the Vikings, 9.8 on the road against the Vikings. And then on the road at the Patriots, 18.38, but then on the road at the Packers, 5.34. So some of these games, he's still staying afloat, but it seems to be that the lower floors are coming on the road. I mean, both single-digit performances came on the road at the Vikings, at the Packers. But again, like overall, like even the full body of work, CJ Stroud's just been a brutal player to own this year, and I think part of it is because the run game has been so strong, and that just wasn't something I could have envisioned in a million years. Like I knew Joe Mixon coming to Houston was going to be an upgrade over Devin Singletary. I didn't know how much exactly, but I knew it'd be an upgrade. I didn't know it was going to be like
as long as Joe Mixon, gas in the tank.
As long as Joe Mixon's playing, like the pass game can basically do nothing, and the Texans are still going to be competing. So I didn't fully take into account how much they could lean on that run game and render a guy who we knew was basically a pure pocket passer just even more kind of useless. I mean, I say that he's still position rank 11. I don't quite know how. I guess maybe
it's been that bad.
That's the state of the quarterback position, I guess. So I'm at the point with CJ Stroud where I'm starting him this week. Again, he's at home against the Colts. To me, that one's easy. But like next week on the road at the Jets, I know Russ just tore him up, but like he's not an auto lock for me on the road at the Jets. I may be looking another direction. So it is what it is with this Houston team right now. Tyreek Hill, next up on Mount Busmore, 1.3 points.
Man.
There's not much more to say about it at this point. I think we were expecting maybe a little more, coming out of the bye against an exploitable Colts defense. But it was still Tyler Huntley, and honestly, Mike McDaniel didn't even scheme much up for Tyreek Hill, which was a little puzzling. Maybe just he's accepting his fate right now that Tyler Huntley can't operate this offense. He's just counting down the days till Tua comes back, because it was very weird to see not only the lack of production, but also just the lack of usage for Tyreek Hill. Jaden Reed, 2 points, Pat, as you so notably mentioned at the start of the show. Jaden Reed with 2 points.
I have a lot
surprising.
of Jaden Reed, though, so I was not happy about it still.
Yeah, it was that was a pretty bad performance from him. The guy who we expect to at least produce like he's the Packers wide receiver one, but now lately that's been Romeo Doubs taking that production. I think Packers receivers might be just a little frustrating, but Jaden, certainly better days ahead for him as well.
That was part of the reason why I was willing to part with him, was just like he'd been really good, and like he's going to be in that offense, but just there's at least the room for inconsistency.
Right. Definitely. And then the last member of Mount Busmore was also on Thursday Night Football, just like our Mount Studmore member, Javonte Williams, but it is Alvin Kamara, 5.4 points. Actually just signed an extension shortly before this show. It was a 2-year extension for about $24 million to stay with the Saints. But fantasy-wise, I'm not really thrilled about Alvin Kamara's prospects right now. The injuries to the offensive line and to Derek Carr have just really zapped any sort of explosiveness that we saw with the 40-point bombs the first 2 weeks of the year.
Yeah.
And I think they're hopefully going to get progressively healthier. I know they're getting Ruiz back this week. Carr is still TBD, but it doesn't feel like an exciting player to own right now.
Yeah, I was facing Kamara, and I was, like, genuinely terrified just because no Olave, no Rashid Shaheed, no
Right.
Taysom Hill with Spencer Rattler. He's probably going to be dumping it off constantly. It turns out it's just no Derek Carr doesn't mean that Kamara's going to act as a security blanket for the backup. It just means the offense is going to be fucking abysmal. Right. That offense was just really bad, and, maybe if they get Olave back and get some of these other pieces back, like you said, on the line, that maybe it could turn around even with Rattler, but yeah, it's until Carr comes back, I am not eager about Alvin Kamara.
No, and it's like I want to call him a buy low candidate because, down the stretch of the season, like let's look at week 13 on. You got Rams, Giants, Commanders, and then Packers is a tough one, but then you got the Raiders. Like that's a nice fantasy playoff schedule, but at the same time, I don't know that I want to advocate for like an older running back and looking even further down the year where the wear and tear adds up even more, and we don't know what the injury outlook's going to be for the Saints. If they keep having these issues, then that's, I don't want to just assume, oh, hey guys, eventually everyone's going to get healthy and he's going to get back to what he did early in the year. We don't know that for sure, and now not to say this as a guy who picked him up as a flyer, but like Kendre Miller did okay with the touches he got. Yeah. So he could be involved as well, just in as far as lowering the ceiling ever so slightly. I don't think he's going to take this backfield by any means, but couple carries, decently efficient on him, especially at the end of the game. Who knows? So that is Mount Bustmore and Mount Studmore for this week. Now we will get into our draft segment. Pat and I will go back and forth drafting just the players we like best for the rest of the year. Again, taking into account strength of schedule, what they've done so far this year, and just use this information as, if you have these players, obviously feel pretty good about them the rest of the year.
And if I pick them, fade them.
If you have these players, you should feel good about them. I think I'll believe in us. And if you don't have these players, like maybe these are guys you should be targeting. Obviously, that's going to be easier said than done with some of these guys because it is going to be the guys that have just popped off like crazy this year. But if some of these studs are on maybe teams that are trying to win now, you could make a deal with them. This is just a way to get perspective on how we're viewing things as we are now, 7 weeks into the season and who the best assets will be the rest of the way. So, Pat, I'll give
first?
you the 101. I'll give you the 101. And here's what we're going to fill: a standard sort of lineup, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, and a flex. We're not going to do defense and kicker because duh.
The first pick, Kaimi. No.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you.
And obviously we're not going in order here of, down the roster, but I'm going to be a bit strategic here because I think there's just one really big advantage. And I'm taking Lamar Jackson first here just because I think that he is, especially with Jaden Daniels getting hurt, I think he's just that much better than, some of the other options. Like we've seen Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts lay some eggs. I don't expect that to happen. If you took Lamar, I'd pick one of those two happily. But even when we've seen him some of the down games where he doesn't have the rushing upside, he just decides to throw for 5 fucking touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Or last week when, he didn't have the rushing upside, he throws for almost 400 yards. So, he is doing everything right, and in a landscape where the quarterback play has been so bad, and some of these better performing quarterbacks are on worse teams, a la like Joe Burrow, he is by far the MVP favorite right now. It's third. Crazy.
Yeah, it's shocking that it took until this week for Lamar to overtake Patrick Mahomes as the MVP odds-on favorite when Patrick Mahomes has been a poopy so far. Okay. With my first pick, it's between 2 guys. They're both running backs. I mean, this has been the year of the running back. There hasn't really been, a lot of great receivers that have stayed healthy. A lot of really good receivers that have gotten hurt. Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, you name them. I'm gonna go because of. Do I just not overthink this? Screw it. I'm gonna go with my gut. I'm gonna go with the guy that strength of schedule wise I want. And that's Saquon Barkley. I'm going to take Saquon Barkley with my first pick. Already had his bye, which is also maybe a slight tiebreaker here with the other guy who, you guys can probably guess who I was between there. It was him or Derrick Henry. The RB1 overall thus far this year. But Saquon Barkley not far behind as the RB3 in half PPR. Just dropped 25.7 points on his former team. And just look at the defenses he plays the rest of the way. And this is partially by virtue of being in the NFC East. But you've got Bengals, Jaguars, Cowboys, Commanders, Rams, Ravens is the only one that's even remotely threatening so far. Panthers, Steelers, and then Commanders, Cowboys, and Giants. That is an ideal fantasy schedule, and he has been nearly as good as Derrick Henry outside of the Week 6 dud against the Browns. But other than that, we've had 3 games for him now of over 25 points in half PPR, and then the other 2 games were 12 and 15. As much as Derrick Henry's getting, all the hype right now, totally get it, totally deserved. But I don't think Saquon is going to finish very far behind him, if at all, by the end of the year. So I'm going Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, watching him carve up the Giants after clearly being undervalued, like Bill Belichick last night on the Manning cast was like, what, they could have just paid him like $10 million more, but they got some guard or something. It's like, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that strength of schedule is so good, especially considering the fact that Baltimore has a really tough schedule against running backs and a Week 14 bye. Obviously, I did not care when taking that into account with Lamar. So that's why I don't want to take Henry. I just might give you the. Important to note too that most standard leagues
do not have their playoffs in week 14. Like that's pretty unique to us with our league does 2-week playoff matchups still. Most leagues do single week playoff matchups and still don't include week 18. So they just do playoffs week 15, 16, 17. So this week 14 bye is a lot more meaningful to us than the general public, which is why I'm trying not to put too much into it.
Okay, so like I said, I and also just having Lamar, I think I might just want to pivot because then I can take whatever 2 running backs I want. Unless you cuck me and take a running back in your flex, I don't know why. But
I could. I might.
Yeah, you could here. Okay. I think we all overthought it in the offseason because turns out this guy is probably still the best wide receiver in the league and has been one of the best wide receivers in the league. I'm taking Justin Jefferson. Doesn't have like a particularly strong schedule the rest of the way, but he has just been such a focal point of this offense where, like, we've seen some stuff from Jordan Addison. You're getting TJ Hockenson back. But it is clear that this Kevin O'Connell offense has elevated Sam Darnold to a level where he can more than provide what Justin Jefferson needs. So I think he's clearly, well, not clearly, but for me, he is my number 1 wide receiver going forward.
I think that's fair. So, I mean, Justin Jefferson in half PPR right now is the wide receiver 4 in points per game. One of the players above him is Nico Collins, who is on IR, and one of the other players above him is A.J. Brown, who obviously has not played for a large portion of the season. That's why it's by per game. The receivers ahead of him in total points, Jamar Chase, Chris Godwin, who unfortunately we know is done for the season, and Drake London. So I think that's an interesting pick. I don't think it's a bad pick because that is, that's the one, well, not the one guy, but one of the guys in the top like 5 to 10 of receivers that we fully expected to be there, and we can kind of count on that production going forward. There's nothing that tells you what Justin Jefferson has done thus far in the season was fluky in any sense of the word. So I understand how bankable Justin Jefferson feels to kind of get on your team there. All right. Which direction do I want to go here? Well, since you took a quarterback, I don't need to take a quarterback now until the very end. So I will leverage that. I feel like I have to because you left them for me. I'm going to go my second running back, and I'm just going to take Derrick Henry because that is, I was well between those two, and he has just been an absolute freak. Fun fact, when you sort by position rank under running backs, you get Derrick Henry, and then you also get Scott Matlock because he's technically position rank 1 listed as a defensive tackle, but he also like comes up under the running backs because he's the number 1 defensive tackle, but he's the only defensive tackle we can see in our system because we're not IDP. Just wanted to note that. But Derrick Henry, yes, the schedule is tough the rest of the way, but Derrick Henry just, I don't think cares. And look, once the weather starts getting colder, I saw a very apt tweet. I think it was from Ian Hartitz on Twitter. He was like, you think Derrick Henry's a freak now? Wait till he faces a defense that quit on the season 2 weeks ago in the freezing cold. I'm like, yeah, this guy's just going to be running over teams. So, look, Derrick Henry's upcoming schedule, you've got Browns, Broncos, Bengals, Steelers. So, I mean, out of that stretch, there's a few tough defenses in there. Chargers, Eagles, and then we end out with, after the bye, and this is the fantasy playoffs, Giants, Steelers, Texans. So look, Giants easy, Steelers not easy, Texans not easy. But I don't think it matters. Like the way he plays and with how good this offense has been, I'm not expecting. You have Lamar Jackson as your quarterback, and he has shown that he is a very, very adept passer. Like, it's not like these teams are just going to be able to sell out and stop the run. I think eventually Derrick Henry, even in tough matchups, is going to be able to pop one and be just fine. So I'm very, very comfortable with taking Derrick Henry as my second running back.
Even last night when he was oddly on the sideline for an extended period of time, all it takes is one huge run, and you're back in it. And he is probably more likely than anyone to break off a big run. So now I'm going to monopolize the wide receivers now. So I'll just take Jamar Chase too with Justin Jefferson. We saw a slow start week 1, but Joe Burrow's been pretty good. And again, is there someone more likely to make a big play than Jamar Chase? Maybe not. So yeah.
I think that makes sense. You got the 2 LSU boys there at wide receiver. Yeah, fun fact, spoiler alert, if it wasn't already obvious before we started the segment, both our teams are going to be stacked. So like we're going to make you guys pick whose is more stacked if we can.
It's going to be yours, but I can
if we can possibly do that. But both these teams are going to be stacked. Well, Okay, so I mean, I could go another running back.
Wait. I'm really going 0 RB again, aren't I?
You're going
God
0
damn
RB
it.
in a draft where you have every running back essentially at your disposal. Yes, you are. Okay.
Definitely getting the value.
I mean, I guess a few different ways I could go here. I could dip into the receivers. I think tight ends are just like, there's a couple tight ends that I feel are pretty equal value. I don't feel like one is like such a value over another that I need to take one. Not like the way you took Lamar. Because I think you're right with Jaden Daniels getting hurt. Like Lamar's the biggest positional advantage safely that you can see right now. So I think that makes sense. I think I'll go wide receiver. And I will go. I almost want to double dip on the Eagles, but
I mean, it's a good choice.
I'm gonna go CeeDee Lamb. I'm gonna go with CeeDee Lamb. Has not been like the best thus far this year. Position rank 16. Obviously, they've had the bye, so that's part of it. I'll sort by per game and see where he's at because I don't know where exactly he's at. Gotta shuffle out some of the outliers here. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So wide receiver 14 in points per game. Granted, Rashee Rice is above him. Rice, Godwin, and Nico Collins are all above him. But basically on the wide receiver one borderline. I think better days are going to be ahead for him. I don't necessarily think this is going to be an exact carbon copy of what happened last year, which was the Cowboys had a bye around the same time, and then they immediately came out firing. CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott as a stack were a league-winning stack if you had it. Their team in our league won with that stack after a slow start to the year. And those guys won leagues for a lot of people. I don't necessarily think it's going to be that drastic, but I do think things are going to be better. CeeDee Lamb, widely the first receiver off the board in a lot of fantasy drafts, most fantasy drafts, I think. And he has not had a 100-yard game yet, which feels impossible.
Yeah.
I think they're coming. He still had pretty good production despite the dysfunctionality of the Cowboys offense. And again, it's a strength of schedule thing. It's an NFC East thing. Like, you've got upcoming, maybe not the easiest defenses, but then once it gets down to where it matters, week 12 and on, Commanders, Giants, Bengals, Panthers, Bucks, Eagles, and Commanders again. So just a great strength of schedule. The obvious wide receiver one on his team. I think that is a great wide receiver one to have to go with my Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry.
I'm thinking about still going 0 RB. No, I will pivot to running back here, and this is kind of not an obvious pick because there are running backs on the board who had more draft capital than him. But for a number of reasons, I'm going Kyren Williams here.
Okay.
The volume has been insane. He has played 79% of the snaps or more in every game this year. He has a touchdown in every game this year. And even with the Rams offense not being fantastic, well, the Raiders make everyone look fantastic, but you know that he is going to be involved, and you know he is going to get those opportunities at the goal line, even when Cooper Kupp comes back. Like, they are still, if you know one thing about that offense is they are going to pound Kyren Williams, and a great schedule as well here. What on Fantasy Pros, they have like a 5-star rating. Besides the Eagles, they're the only other team, oh no, the Cardinals, but who cares about James Conner, with a 5-star remaining schedule. What the Vikings might be tough on Thursday, but you got the Seahawks, the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Eagles, the Saints, the Bills. Like, these are teams that, you think like, oh yeah, those are pretty good, but they have not been stout against the run this year at all. So I think the combo of the volume and the schedule.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. All right, let me get Kyren Williams down for you, and while I deliberate to figure out who the fuck I want to go with here, I think there's an obvious one that I have in my head, so I'm trying to see if I want to go away from it. Nah, I don't think I'm going to go away from it. I am going to harp on this NFC East situation for as long as I possibly can, and I'll go with A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown missed a large chunk of the season and then came back and immediately started torching defenses.
For real.
A.J. Brown this season, in the games he's played, 20.4, 20.6, and 17.4. And then going forward, again, strike the schedule, Bengals, Jaguars, Cowboys, Commanders, Rams, Ravens, Panthers, Steelers, Commanders, Cowboys, Giants. Like, I don't know how you have more confidence. I know I read that all out with Saquon already, but it still applies for A.J. Brown. I think this Eagles offense is going to be a pretty nice source of fantasy points, and A.J. Brown, as we saw, with Devonta Smith, who was very much eligible for Mount Bustmore and probably should have been on there with his 0.3 this week. A.J. Brown has had no problem relegating Devonta Smith to supporting cast duty, and A.J. Brown, I think, has as good a path as anybody to be wide receiver 1 the rest of the way. So I'll add him to the squad here.
Okay. I think I am going to round out. I'm going to pick my flex before I pick my RB2 here. No. I'm just going to pick a running back, put him in the flex. No, and again, this is a slightly biased pick, as I have a good share of this man. But that aside, there's no reason to believe that Drake London can't keep doing what he's done outside of the week 1 egg here. Like we've talked about Kyle Pitts and how he's, not they still, and Darnell Mooney's been involved, but Drake London is the guy that Cousins is looking for in the end zone. He's the guy he's looking for, and they've got a pretty good schedule, and he has just been such a good, I got him in the 3rd round in our league, and I just can't believe that because he's just been so good. And, sure, I could have taken a guy like Amon-Ra, who, maybe I should have. Maybe that's the bias showing. But, even a guy like Tyreek, who could easily vault back to being Tyreek, I'm scared of that. I'm not scared of Drake London having a cataclysmic fall off the way Tyreek could if Tua takes one bad hit or is just not himself.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I very much thought about taking Drake London, not over A.J. Brown or C.D. Lamb, but possibly
I wouldn't have either.
Draft. He's playing that Cooper Kupp role for this new and improved Falcons offense. He's been probably the most consistent contributor on that team. I don't hate that pick at all. Drake London's a guy that I have looked at, as just kind of this league-winning maybe target in trades in other leagues. So I definitely like that pick. Okay. I've got a flex spot open, and then I've got my quarterback and tight end. Again, no reason to take quarterback until the last pick, so I won't. I could go either tight end or flex here. I think I'm going to go with my flex because, again, tight end, I just don't see the positional difference or positional advantage from one guy over another. There's so many guys that I could make an argument for here that it makes it really, really hard. I mean, just candidly, I'm looking at Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill with the Tua redux, Devon Achane even with the Tua redux. I think, trying to figure out what the most responsible pick would be here.
Please pick responsibly.
I think the most responsible pick, I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker here. I'm going to put Kenneth Walker in my flex. He's been a model of consistency this year.
Absolutely.
Position rank 8 because he's missed, he missed week 2 and 3, but his fantasy point totals 17.9, 31.6, 11.1, 16.9, and 22.3. I just feel like he's going to be a rock in that flex spot. And as much as I am a Breece Hall believer, I'm completely a Breece Hall believer.
Yeah.
Walker hasn't had the lows that Breece has had this year, and he doesn't have a team with as much of a spotlight on it and a weird vibe situation as the Jets do. Again, feel good about Breece Hall if you have him as far as the rest of the year goes. But I think, gun to my head, if I had to pick one guy to have for the rest of the year out of Kenneth Walker or Breece Hall, I think I'd pick Kenneth Walker. So I'm going to put him in my flex spot.
No, that's bold. That was not someone I was particularly considering. But a good pick nonetheless. I think I'm going to get a jump on tight end here. And there's two guys, obviously. I think there are two guys that are a bit ahead of the field here. The question is which one, because both of them have real drawbacks to them. One of them has an injury that could possibly be nothing, and the other plays for the Las Vegas Raiders, which might as well just put a baseball bat to the kneecap. It might as well be that. The thing I worry about with Bowers is just that it's the Raiders. We've seen Bowers, he had a game where I believe he had 14 yards. He had two catches for 19 yards, but he's had 8 catches or more on double-digit targets 3 straight games.
He's a receiver.
He's basically receiver, and the only guy they have, like Jacoby Myers is going to come back. Also, pick up Jacoby Myers, I guess, if he's available in your league. Because when he comes back, he's gonna get good volume, but he's still going to be the number 2 to Brock Bowers. The way I see it with George Kittle is he has a foot sprain. They make it seem like it might not be an issue, and if George Kittle's on the field, I have 0 doubts about him, as opposed to Bowers, where I have some. So I am going to go George Kittle here, just because. Especially now with Ayuk done for the year, we haven't talked about that yet. And Debo with pneumonia, who knows with pneumonia? He could play on Sunday. He could miss a couple weeks. Like you just, the lingering respiratory problems from that is just very, very unknown. So even with just Ayuk out, and obviously still no Christian McCaffrey, no sign of when we'll see Christian McCaffrey, I think he is just going to continue to be an absolute stalwart. And he catches touchdowns. He's in an offense that scores touchdowns. Brock Bowers is not. Is not. So, assuming this foot sprain is nothing, I think at the very least, George Kittle is tight end 2 the rest of the way.
Yeah,
Honorable mention, Trey McBride.
Yeah, I think those were the 2 guys that we were both going to be between. It's funny how if we had done this draft last week, we might have had Travis Kelce as like the favorite in this category, but he 4 catches for 17 yards this past week on 5 targets, 3.7 points. He was certainly a Mount Bustmore candidate as well.
Just got to shake it off this coming week here, and I think I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
You made a fucking Sunday joke.
I think there's still an argument to be made for Travis Kelce. I mean, look, that Niners defense, linebackers are still their strength. That they're going to be able to cover Travis a little bit better than the average team. Especially, he's about to go up at the Raiders this week, and Pat, he may tear you guys to shreds.
Absolutely! You're smashing the start button on Travis Kelce this week.
Yeah, so I think there's still an argument. I wouldn't blame anybody if they were to take Travis as their favorite rest of season tight end, but I am going to take Brock Bowers. My main concern with Bowers is if Desmond Ridder were to take over at quarterback. I don't know how that's going to look, but
dear God.
You mentioned it. The targets the last 3 weeks, 12, 10, and 14.
It's undeniable.
Turning them into 8 catches, 9 catches, and 10 catches. In PPR, that is just like, it doesn't matter if he's scoring touchdowns. You've got that floor most weeks. So I'm going to feel pretty good about Bowers in my lineup every week going forward, and I think he is probably tight end 1 to me for the rest of the season. So I will take Brock Bowers. And now, what do you have left to fill?
I've got my RB2.
You have a running back. You need a running back.
I've got a running back. This is really tough here because you mentioned Breece Hall, and inherently that was the first name that came to mind for me. But there are the questions about the offense. There's Bijan Robinson, who has started to look pretty good again, but I think this guy here is in an offense where even when we talked about their quarterback had an appalling stat line, that offense was still cooking, and it was because of him. And when beside the game he got hurt, Joe Mixon has been unbelievable. Even the game where he didn't, 2 games with at least 25 carries, but even the game against the Patriots, he only had 13 carries, but he still turned it into 100 yards. The goal line touches are going to be there no matter what. I just think I'm more so picking the offense. And Joe Mixon, but Joe Mixon's been really good too, don't get me wrong. But in this case, I'm giving Joe Mixon that advantage because of those opportunities are definitely going to be there. Where like with Breece Hall, like we've seen the egg games, and the only egg Mixon laid was because he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. Joe Mixon, that this is not a crazy pick. He is RB2 in points per game this year with 20.8. Fun fact, between all of our or not between all of our running backs, but between most of the running backs that we selected here, we got the top 4 in points per game. Number 5 was Alvin Kamara, so we left him out. And then number 6 was Kyron Williams. So we covered, out of the 5 total running backs that we drafted, they were 5 of the top 6 in fantasy points per game. So definitely makes sense to our draft strategy here. I don't hate that pick at all. I think maybe visually, like, should we put up a poll of this? That might be the pick that people are like, ew, Brand's team is better. But, like, Joe Mixon, for what he's done, he's been very, very good. Like there's
and the
no
fact that I gifted you Barkley and Henry is probably more of what's gonna give you is I'd vote for your team, but I'm okay with that.
You gifted me Barkley and Henry, and
I wanted to talk about some other guys there. Yeah,
that's fair. And I'm gonna go to Jaden Daniels now as my quarterback.
Even with the possibility that he might miss a couple weeks here.
Yeah, I mean, look, like for the sake of this exercise, it's hard, right? Because are we doing this as a 2-team league? Like, who am I filling in for? But yeah, I think Jaden Daniels, like, if I had to pick a quarterback in a normal league and you said you could have any quarterback you want for the rest of the year, give me Jaden Daniels and I'll go out and stream a Darnold or a Goff for the next 2 weeks or so and live with that rather than, I do think the gap between like Lamar and Jaden is pretty wide now between everybody else because the other guy up in that conversation is Baker Mayfield, who just lost his top 2 receivers, and Josh Allen, who we've seen the ups and downs from him all season. I think Amari Cooper might stabilize things a little bit, but like Jaden Daniels hasn't shown you a floor of 9.76 and 7.3 like Josh Allen has.
Oh yeah. I mean, if the rib injury, if he was completely healthy, Daniels and Allen and Jackson are lapping the field, essentially. Like, Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts would probably be the next, if I had to pick another one, I'd probably go Jalen Hurts. But, yeah, Daniels has not shown those red flags, potentially, at least in terms of scoring. And I guess you just got to hope. Ribs are tough because, one, it's a pain tolerance thing. It's a breathing thing. And he's going to get hit. Like I saw, it's like, wow, I can't believe Jaden Daniels got hurt already. And it's like Jaden Daniels in college. And it's just him just getting his fucking shit rocked.
Yeah, like, we knew this was who he was.
So quarterbacks are prone to those kind of midsection injuries anyway, let alone this guy. But in terms of what he has shown on the field, he has been fucking fantastic. And I got him in the 14th round of a keeper league, baby. Oh.
Yeah, I regret every day.
It's going to be mine forever.
Regret every day that I didn't take Jaden Daniels just in our draft. And
me too. I regret taking anybody else.
I regret
I would have rather taken Deshaun Watson in the 4th round than Patrick Mahomes. That's how bad he's been.
Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, I guess at least you would have been able to cut bait on Deshaun after this week. Instead, you're going to have that little voice in your head telling you have Patrick Mahomes.
Hey, man, don't do it, man. What if I have 4 touchdowns, man?
Yeah, he hasn't done that since the Vietnam War. All right, just to recap our teams here, Pat has Lamar Jackson. I'll go as if we're going down the lineup. Pat has Lamar Jackson, Kyron Williams, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Drake London, and George Kittle. I have Jaden Daniels, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Kenneth Walker, and Brock Bowers.
I mean, yeah, you just the Henry Barkley, you win no matter what.
Yeah, I mean that's the RB1 and 2 the rest of the way, and in a year that has valued running backs so much, that's a pretty.
The way I see it, though, we just listed 14 players, very good players who are surely going to be very good the rest of the way.
Sure. Definitely. I think, a couple of picks that maybe surprise people just as being above guys we could have taken. Kenneth Walker, Drake London, guys were, and I mean,
leaving Breece Hall and Bijan on the cutting room floor, and Amon-Ra as well, are probably the 3 biggest snubs, I would say.
I am excited to see what draft boards look like for the first round next year. I think they might match what our league just does anyway, which is super running back heavy. I think that might be the consensus next year after all the shenanigans.
If I don't take a running back in the first round next year,
I'll kill you. I'll just
put me in a cage.
I'll just
like we won't let Pat out of the cage until he drafts a running back.
The problem's going to be it is going to be running back heavy, and you're going to just have like the 10th pick, and like CeeDee Lamb's going to fall to you again, and you're just going to be like.
And then A.J. Brown's going to fall back to me at like 15.
Right.
Exactly. And the next thing I know, my RB1 will be, oh, God, who's funny? Zamir White.
Oh, no. All right. Let's move on to our ouchie outlook.
Ouch.
All right. So Pat originally in our show sheet had that the injuries were not nearly as bad as they had been in prior weeks.
That's on me.
Monday Night Football Pat killed Mike Evans and Chris Godwin because we just had major fantasy contributors go down on Monday Night Football. Mike Evans, hamstring injury, has not been placed on IR. Doesn't seem like he will be, but is likely out until after the Week 11 bye with a severe hamstring injury. And then Chris Godwin dislocated his ankle. He is going to be out until at least late in the playoffs if he is able to return at all this year. So the Bucs are going to be without these guys. By the way, just quick breaking news, but expected. The Browns are planning to start Jameis Winston this week, so that is just to note that. But yeah, these guys are out for the Bucs. These guys are going to be out for the Bucs. Pat, I guess let's just weave this in with our waiver targets because this is going to leave Jalen McMillan as one of the highest waiver priority targets this year. Look, we haven't yet seen that he can handle any sort of featured role. That's why I think it's worth, if you have, well, I mean, nobody has bench space, but if you want to take a shot in this Bucs offense and you can't get your hands on Jalen McMillan, I don't think it's the worst thing to try your hand at a Trey Palmer, and especially if Cade Otton is unowned in your league.
If Cade Otton's unowned.
He's still only owned in 42.3% of ESPN leagues.
That's insane, especially with tight end. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, now that's going to change now that he is their number one target.
He almost had me vaulting off a cliff last night.
I know. Pat was facing the Cade Otton, Derrick Henry Monday Night Football duo.
Don't worry, I had the Marvin Harrison defense going against them.
That defense was that security guard that barely pats the guy down.
Pritzing. I just want to talk to someone. I just want to talk.
Jalen McMillan season.
The one thing in Jalen McMillan's favor is, he got hurt, but he was playing a lot. Right out of the jump, he was playing over 80% of the snaps the first 2 or 3 games. And it's clear that they trust him to do that. Will they trust him to get that target share? We'll see. I mean, I think Cade Otton's floor is going to be absolute rock solid now. He's had a good floor anyway. I think that floor just gets lifted a little bit.
Yeah.
It's because Chris God, we talked about it. Both of these guys have been so good. Mike Evans had the Marshawn Lattimore inevitable egg, but Godwin had been so reliable. And I remember just watching it. I'm just like, is his ankle backwards? And they were just like, oh yeah, and he's down on the field. They were kind of and I'm just like, his ankle's not the right way. Terrible. And again, I guess you could argue it's only a 10-point game. Why the fuck was he out there? Why the hell was he out there in that situation when you've already lost Evans and you've effectively already lost the game? I understand 10 points is not really enough to throw in the towel because technically you could do it.
They had just recovered the onside too, so I mean it was in range.
You'd have to do that again. You'd have to go score a quick touchdown, onside kick, quick field goal again. It's brutal. It's brutal for Chris Godwin. It's brutal for Chris Godwin owners. He has been, honestly, I think he would have been a guy worth mentioning in our rest of season draft.
Certainly.
I don't think he would have been taken, but he would have been worth mentioning. So, just they're saying he's likely out for the year. It's by that point at the end of the year when he's ready to come back, who knows if that's even going to be worth it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. The Bucs have been, kind of dominating this division for the last few years. But if the Falcons keep on this trajectory, the Bucs, having lost Godwin and losing Evans for an important stretch, they actually have a game against the Falcons coming up. Yeah, it's really it's hard to project that far forward. So, look, I think Jalen McMillan, there's an argument to be made, should be the top waiver priority this week just because of how good this Bucs offense has looked, and with him being the most likely benefactor of it, I think that puts him a little above.
Too. Yeah.
No, it's not. Yeah, it puts him, even though it's speculative and it's not it's not like a Jawan Jennings who we'll talk about. You are getting a piece, possibly the wide receiver one of one of the most explosive offenses
of an offense where you want their wide receiver one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so again, Jalen McMillan, top priority. I think Trey Palmer, great speculative ad. Sterling Shepard, less interested in just because of the age and he was already playing a situational role. I don't know that his role is going to change.
Yeah, maybe
much.
It could be like a DeMarcus Robinson situation in Los Angeles where even with the players going out, he was still the same old guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, continuing with the injuries, we got Jaden Daniels. We obviously mentioned the rib injury week to week. Just got to keep an eye on him. If he misses time, that's going to lower the ceiling of every Commander's weapon. Marcus Mariota,
I was going to say, I'm about to say something gross.
Oh, no. What are you about to say?
You could do worse. He's got rushing upside.
Oh, God. Yeah, I guess.
He
had 11 carries in that game? Commanders, what we need to talk.
I'm sure he was running for his fucking life on most of those, was honestly probably it, but... it was the meme of like all the SpongeBob characters like sadly walking away, and it's like me showing up to start Marcus Mariota in week 8. Like,
yeah,
it sucks. You know, again, like we talked about it, rib is a pain tolerance thing, and for a quarterback, that's a really vulnerable spot to be. So,
yeah, I mean, look, if it comes down to it and Jaden ends up weak, I guess we could talk about starting Mariota next week against the Jets, but like this week against the Bears, don't do that, please.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Okay, Brandon Ayuk, torn ACL. He is out for the year, and we will also loop that in with Deebo Samuel, who has pneumonia and is out indefinitely. So this is going to open up.
And George Kittle, who has a sprained foot.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is opening up opportunities in San Francisco for sure. Jawan Jennings, he's back on the menu after a nice little stretch earlier in the year. I think he is the obvious number one target. But then we've also got Ricky Pearsall. He needs to be mentioned as well because his timing of being activated could not have come at a better time with the Niners possibly being, likely, I would say, being out both their top 2 receivers at least this week.
And there was so much talk before the year when Ayuk was destined to be traded. God, that feels like an eternity ago. that Ricky Pearsall was going to be a huge benefactor of it. So now the fact that Ayuk is out, even if Deebo only misses maybe this coming week, and if Kittle's fine, like there's still going to be plenty to go around for either Jennings or Pearsall. I mean, I think it's more inclined to be Jennings just because we've seen it. Like, we've seen him arguably have, in terms of value, the best week by anybody. And we could, at the end of the year, in terms of a guy that was not getting drafted, going and throwing up, 35 points in a week that he was started, too.
Yeah.
Not just like some random game where it's like, what the fuck? Like, yeah, I think Jawan Jennings is the priority. Even if you don't need a wide receiver, go get him. And then just don't let somebody else have him. But Pearsall is also a good one too.
Yeah. DK Metcalf, knee injury week to week because I can't have nice things personally.
And Pat's pals can't have nice things.
My team was just kind of getting healthy now. I mean, Achan's been healthy, I guess, but now, Tua's coming back, so he's going to be full strength and all this stuff. And then DK Metcalf is week to week now, and I want to put a bullet in my head.
Sounds like you need Marvin Harrison.
I could get Marvin Harrison's production from anyone on the waiver wire.
Dortch.
Not limited to the likes of, I don't know,
Zay
let me
Jones.
scroll 3 pages past, like Calvin Austin probably. Yeah, he went for 4.1. I could manage with that.
Without the misery too, yeah.
Yeah, DK Metcalf. So, look, this is just going to open up things a little more for JSN and Tyler Lockett. I think it's one of those things where there's probably not a corresponding ad. Maybe Noah Fant if you need a tight end, but he's still in a tight end rotation. Like him and AJ Barner and I think Pharaoh Brown are all playing almost equal amounts of snaps. But Fant is definitely getting the most looks. So if you really need a tight end, I think you could do worse than Noah Fant. But there's not unless you're a Jake Bobo stan. Not much you can really do. I mean,
which a lot of people are.
I might flex me some Jake Bobo.
This just really means Tyler Lockett is just never fucking going away. I mean, he wasn't going away otherwise. He's had a really solid year after. And it's funny because it really hasn't come too much at the behest of JSN. Like, JSN has had his dud weeks, but JSN's still been pretty good. The fact that all 3 of those guys have coexisted just shows the Seattle offense has a lot to go around. So JSN and Lockett, I think you're pretty much no DK, you're starting both those guys.
Tyler Lockett is the crusty white dog at your grandma's house that just won't fucking die and just
my friend has one of those.
I do.
She's not listening, but
he's got the dirty face and just will not die. And you're gonna have to put him down eventually. But for now, he's still cooking. He's still kicking. David Montgomery, knee injury. He returned to the game. Seemed like he's gonna be fine. Juju Smith-Schuster has a hamstring injury. Pat, see you have here. I didn't realize this. Already ruled out of week 8.
Remember last week how I said there's a chance that Juju could just go catchless? That's not what I meant. But like when I saw him go out, I'm just like, no way. I'm like, there's just no fucking way. But yeah, and I guess the Chiefs are just gonna run the fuck out of the ball, including Patrick Mahomes apparently.
Yeah, I mean, receiver-wise, Xavier Worthy, obvious beneficiary here. Outside of that, Mecole Hardman, I guess. I I think you're better off just avoiding at this point Chiefs receivers. One of them's going to be good, I'm sure, but or good enough at least to
That's
crack
what's
a
just
fantasy
so crazy
lineup,
that Kelsey did jack shit with Juju being out. There just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is it Noah Gray season? I mean, 4 catches for 66 yards on 4 targets. It's gross, man. It's so gross, and it's the Chiefs, and so it feels like you should be able to find something, and yet you just can't.
My God, that's Dwayne Bowe's music.
Yeah, find him in the bingo hall somewhere.
Over the rainbow,
yeah, God. That was 80% of fantasy team names in 2010, I think.
Chris Berman probably had to pay a lot of royalties on that joke on the Blitz.
Okay,
kids don't know what that is. Yep.
on injury return watch this week, we've got Tua Tagovailoa, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Chris Olave, Travis Etienne, Deebo Samuel, iffy. I mean, the man has fluid in his lungs, so who knows? But a bunch of guys scheduled to come back. We always we always mention the bye weeks every week. There are no bye weeks for some reason.
Beautiful.
In the middle of the season, week 8. I don't know why, but there's no bye weeks. So that's nice. Some waiver targets that didn't come up in the ouchie outlook. I mean, we've got Ray Davis, still seems to have a bit of a role, worthy of a handcuff at least.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you have James Cook, you've got to have Ray Davis.
Yeah, definitely. Alexander Madison, a guy who I guess I regret dropping, but
I would. I wish I had him. Yeah.
I mean, look, 23 carries for 92 yards. Yeah, I mean, if you can add a running back who is getting 20 carries in any game, that is valuable. He's not gonna win you a week. He's gone for 13.8 and 15.0 the last 2 weeks, and his floor is the basement.
Absolutely.
But just as far as having running back depth, he's worth owning because he's getting touches. Tyler Goodson, I don't know how much I'm prioritizing him. Yeah, I mean, we think by all odds, actually, finally, that Jonathan Taylor's probably coming back this week. But if not, Tyler Goodson could have another nice week.
I think he's more of a guy to scoop up after waivers clear if he's somehow, if he's still available, because we have the benefit of having Thursday waivers, so we could see on Wednesday, hey, Jonathan Taylor did not practice today, and it's Tyler Goodson. I mean, I'm not letting go of that guy for nothing right now, but.
Yeah,
he is clearly the guy other than Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon was involved, but not only his Goodson just looked a lot better than him. He was finally out touching him this past week.
Mm-hmm. Jaylen Warren, 45.1% owned in fantasy leagues. Seems like he's reclaiming a bit of a role here in the Steelers offense. 2 catches for 15 yards, so I guess Russ did attempt more than one throw to a running back, but barely. So 2 for 15 and then 12 carries for 44 yards, which is nice to see. And look, if this offense is going to be more productive with Russell Wilson in the fold, which sounds insane for me to say with my mouth, then that's going to be good for all their weapons, especially with a quarterback who, despite the rushing touchdown he somehow had this week, is less likely to vulture from his running backs. So Jaylen Warren.
And again, if Najee Harris goes out,
Jaylen
Warren's a must-start.
Jaylen Warren needs to be owned. This 45% rostership is a frustration rostership because of the injuries he's had, which is totally fair. But he's healthy. The Steelers' offense looks better than it has all year. You got to pick him up. Wide receivers, we went over Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and Jalen McMillan. Romeo Doubs, 37% owned. Look, I still think the Packers receivers are going to be frustrating because, again, this second straight good week for Romeo Doubs comes at the expense of Jayden Reed doing nothing. Jayden Reed is not going to do nothing every single week, but Romeo Doubs, still a guy that should be on teams, is a guy that you can throw in your flex and have at least moderate hopes for. Plays the Jags this week. I think he needs to be at least on fantasy rosters.
Yeah.
And then Cedric Tillman. We mentioned it with when we talked about Deshaun and Jameis and all that. I mean, I would take a shot on him. I think he's got a good chance to be the Browns' wide receiver 1 for the rest of the year, at least in terms of production. Jerry Jeudy may maintain that role in total targets, but Tillman even out-targeted him this week, so can't even say that for sure. Tight ends. Cade Otton, mentioned him before. He's owned in a lot of leagues, but he's still available in about 60%.
To be owned in almost all of them.
I think Cade Otton is certainly a top 10 tight end the rest of the way. Hunter Henry, 27.4% owned. The Patriots offense seems to be legit in the sense that like they're at least able to play. Yeah. They're at least able to play catch-up mode effectively in games where they're going to be down. I mean, we allowed a bajillion points to the Jaguars, but Drake May had another really nice day. And the more the Patriots are in scoring opportunities, the more Hunter Henry is going to find himself in scoring opportunities. And he's apparently just capable, like he did earlier this year, of firing off 8 catches for 92 yards. He just does this once a
especially
month.
Since it seems obviously Demario Douglas was sick and on and off the field, but a receiver has really yet to. Granted, it's only been 2 games with Drake May, so we haven't seen someone, one of the wide receivers, go out and truly establish themselves as the top target.
Jalen Polk has been objectively bad, but yeah, Hunter Henry's been the most consistent producer ever since Drake May took over. 11.6 and 13.2 the last 2 weeks. It's possible that level of production continues for ever, hopefully, with Drake May. Yeah. And then Jonnu Smith, we mentioned, he's very speculative because this offense is going to look different with Tua at the helm. So it's hard to know if Jonnu's production lately is a product of
he's
him
at
getting
8
more
and
comfortable.
9 targets the last 2 games with Tyler Huntley. So this could very well, he could very well just go back to being the guy that's like still gets a random jet sweep even in the Mike McDaniel offense. But
yeah, I mean, I think, look, we always talk about this, right? Tight end upside. You want a guy who could be a top 2 target on his team. That's a hard thing to find on waivers, but I think even now, I don't think Jonnu Smith with Tua back even has a path to be a top 3 target on his team because I think Achan's going to out-target him. Yeah. So you've got Tyreek, Waddle, and Achan, and it just gets dicey. But if you want to take the stab at him, continuing this momentum and being a bigger piece, maybe at the expense of Jalen Waddle, who knows? I think that's fair if you have none of these other options at your disposal. Quarterbacks, Drake May. He's looked really good. If you need one, he's going to give you that combination of rushing upside. And again, Patriots are really never going to be playing with a lead, so he's always going to be throwing. Tua Tagovailoa, my opinion on him hasn't really changed since this season and last season. He's going to have a floor that is kind of gross. He went for he was in the 9s late last season.
He was not having a good game before he got concussed, too. He was having an ugly game.
Yeah, 17 for 25 for 145 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 picks in that game. So it was ugly. Tua's going to be a matchup play, but he's as high ceiling of a matchup play as you can get because he can chuck a 70-yard bomb to Tyreek and then chuck a 5-yard dump off to Achan, who takes it in the house. He's surrounded by so many great weapons that I think in the right matchups, he's definitely startable, but you're not throwing him in your spot.
With how bad quarterback has been, too. You've got to take that into account.
Yeah. Russell Wilson, we mentioned before, he's 5.2% owned. And Jameis Winston, we mentioned before, he's 0.4% owned. Just guys to watch out for on a matchup perspective. I don't know. That's a great question.
That'd be a meme league. We should start that. We should just start
probably.
You have to start ridiculous players, and we make a list of who's ridiculous. And it's the brand coverage league. I'm going to get the wheels moving.
I'm down for that. I've rostered Jameis Winston all year in a Dynasty Superflex league, so I'm ready to fire him up, baby.
That's insane.
I'm ready to fire him up. He's getting out.
So
there.
You're one of them.
I'm sleeper. I mean, not at ESPN. My quarterbacks in that league are Purdy, Drake May, and now Jameis, I guess. So I'll start him.
That's him.
maybe I'll start him over Purdy, new QB1, Jameis Winston. All right. Those are our waiver targets, and folks, that is our show for this week. We'll be right back here, same time next week, 7:30 Eastern Time, every Tuesday, as we always are. If you guys are listening to us on any audio platform, Spotify, Apple, wherever it may be, check us out on YouTube live one of these days. Again, 7:30 Eastern Time, youtube.com/BenchwarmerBran. Or if you are joining us live on YouTube or after the fact on YouTube, check us out on those audio platforms if you don't want to see our dumb faces while we talk about fantasy football. You can just listen to our sultry voices instead.
Oh, dear.
But
my voice
for
sounds
Pat
like
Gustafson,
sandpaper.
For Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon Carney, and we will see you guys next week.
Our friend Gary told me to do stuff to his face. Bye-bye.
All right. And for anybody who is here live, we will answer our questions as we always do at the end of the show. We'll get to the dono questions first. Thank you guys for supporting the show as always.
Thank you.
Scott with the Canadian $5, I think that's what that means, said,
yeah.
Hunter Henry or Tucker Kraft, also your opinion on Oreo Coke Zero. I love this question. Hunter Henry or Tucker Kraft? That's interesting. Tucker Kraft a couple weeks ago was this slam dunk, monster play. He was still fine this week because he mixed in a touchdown.
Did a touchdown, right? Yeah.
I think with Drake May at the helm, I think Hunter Henry is just going to be a higher priority in the offense than Tucker Kraft is. So I think I'd go Hunter Henry. It's weird to say that.
I would go Henry as well, just because we've clearly seen with all those great targets. It's great for real-life football for the Packers to have Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft, Christian Watson. It's not great for fantasy. So you're going to see those weeks with Tucker Kraft, but I feel like you're in a similar boat here.
Yeah. And then opinion on Oreo Coke Zero. I like it. To me, it just tastes like... I've had it. I've had the Oreo Coke Zero. I've also had the Oreo or the Coke flavored Oreos.
I saw the Coke flavored Oreos and I was thinking about it, but I just don't need any Oreos in my house or any food
fair.
For that matter.
They're pretty good. The Oreo Coke Zero to me just tastes like cream soda, essentially. Like if you're thinking about Oreos when you're drinking it, you can get it. You definitely get the flavor.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean it's good. I think it's worth a try if you like that kind of novelty stuff. Okay. Do I drop Baker for Russ? I have Daniels and Baker. No. I don't think I would do that. No. Hold Baker, hope that the offensive structure itself just keeps him afloat. He's definitely going to take a hit, but you have Daniels, like, I know this is bad timing. Like, obviously Daniels is hurt and now Baker takes this big hit, but like Russ to me isn't a guaranteed enough play to get rid of, Baker Mayfield just yet. See what he can do this week. Like who do the Bucks play this week? The Bucks have the Falcons. They're at home though against the Falcons. Like I would just roll. I'd roll with Baker. I would not drop it. You can't drop the QB
Falcons
or QB
secondary has not even with AJ Terrell has not been very good.
Yeah, I mean, look, could I see a scenario where we're sitting here in 2 weeks saying, like, should I drop Baker Mayfield because his play has dropped off that much without Evans and Godwin? Sure, but I don't think you can logically react that way just yet. I think that would be irresponsible. He's still the quarterback, too. Let's see what he can do with his secondary weapons before we just jump ship immediately. Mike with $9.99 said Najee Harris or Jalen Warren. I mean, it's still Najee Harris.
It's still Najee Harris. 20-plus opportunities every game. That's a guarantee. Even the Warren still might be the better running back. Like, we've yet to see Jalen Warren truly have the keys. But, again, if one of these guys go down, the other is, I think you're still borderline starting Najee Harris every week, even with Jalen Warren.
Yeah. Cameron with $4.99 said, Burrow or Sam Darnold this week, or should I look elsewhere? Okay, totally a valid question between those two. So Burrow's got the Eagles.
And the Darnolds have the Vikings have the Rams on Thursday night.
Man.
Short week.
I hate short weeks. I hate Thursday night football. I really do. With like hoping for a lot of
points. Imagine having
to
start TJ Hawkinson tomorrow because you're afraid of George Kittle's foot.
I think I'd go Darnold. I think I would.
I just think the Rams defense has been so suspect, especially the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no reason to fade Darnold in this Vikings team other than the fact that it's a short week, but that's not enough to undo. Darnold's been so consistent this year outside of the Jets game with 4 points. Like you're looking at I guess week 1 wasn't very good at either with 14.62, but like then you've got 19, 23, 20, 16, and this is one of the weaker defenses he's played this year. I think I would go with Sam Darnold. Let's see, Cameron with another one, same Cameron. Said, which two should I start? Tank Dell, Marvin Harrison Jr., Demario Douglas, or Keon Coleman? Pat, this just encompasses like our teams.
This is disgusting, but I'm going to go with the don't overthink it answer, and I'm still starting Tank Dell and Marvin Harrison. Like, we've seen what these guys can do. And granted, we've seen what Keon Coleman can do, but I would rather have, I guess neither of these guys are super veteran, established guys. But, we've seen what Tank Dell can do, and still with Nico Collins out. I think last week was just going to be such an anomaly for this Texans team. I think Stroud will get the wagon back going forward, and Dell will certainly catch a pass. Book that. Marvin Harrison, on the other hand, might not get a target just because he beat Kyler in Call of Duty or something. Like he's not happy with him. I'm going with the names here, but Coleman is definitely, we didn't mention him really in the waiver wire section, but I've seen him in a lot of waiver wire things I've read and watched this week, so he's not a bad guy to own.
Coleman's an interesting one because I saw a note from J.J. Zachariason who, he was like, I keep hearing that Amari Cooper has opened things up for Keon Coleman and all this stuff. All of Keon Coleman's targets came on plays where Amari Cooper was not on the field. So
yes, really? See, I did not know that. That's crazy.
So Amari Cooper did not open anything up. I don't know what could have led to Keon Coleman's explosion, if it was just pure coincidence or something else. Defenses were just, they didn't research him enough and were just researching Cooper all week. I don't know what it was. It was very odd.
Did my mic catch that knee crack? Because I had a significant knee crack. Okay.
I didn't hear it, but
and it's like 6 inches, which is too much, by the way, too far away from the microphone. So I wasn't sure.
6 inches is way too much. You heard it.
Oh, dude, it hurts, man. It hurts.
As far as my answer to this, I mean, fuck it. I'm just gonna go super biased to my team. I'll just say Tank Dell and Demario Douglas. I'm starting both of them this week.
Biased.
But the reason I'm gonna say that is Marvin Harrison's usage this year has been so bad. And that's not just to say it's the targets. It's also, I saw a chart of like guys who are the furthest downfield 3 seconds into each play. And it was like, so it's these traditional field stretchers, right? The guys who are basically decoys. It's
the
your
jackrabbits.
Yeah, it's Alec Pierce, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, guys like that. And then Jalen Hyatt. And then the only seemingly actual good receiver on there was Marvin Harrison Jr. So they have turned him into this one-dimensional player. And that's just not what he is.
He's anything but that. That's what makes him so good.
That's not what he's supposed to be.
And I thought after that huge 2-touchdown game against the Rams that this was just going to be the explosion. And granted, will that happen? I think it will. Like Drew Pretzing just said straight up, like, we need to get him the ball. We need to get him the ball more. And they do. It's been absolutely fucking infuriating, especially last night as I was watching my lead plummet. I'm like, Marvin, just catch a couple more passes, man, and I'll be fine. And I was scared shitless.
Yeah,
and
so
miserable.
It sounds crazy to go with Pop Douglas over Marvin Harrison Jr., but Harrison's targets the last 4 games, 6, 2, 7, and 6. And then Douglas's targets, keep in mind he was sick this week. Before this week, 9, 9, 3, 9. And I think he was well on his way to probably almost 9 against the Jaguars.
Shit, yeah.
They're going up against the Jets this week at home. He's, because of the nature of him as a slot guy and moving around the formation, he's not going to get shadowed by Sauce Gardner. I think there's just going to be a good opportunity for him to get a high chunk of targets. And in a PPR league, put it this way, I can't even say that. I was going to say if you're playing for ceiling, go with Harrison. I don't even think that's true necessarily. So I would go with Douglas for now if you have that option and kind of make Marvin prove it, because Marvin's been bad for 3 straight weeks. And at a certain point, how much longer do you stick with it if you have another option?
I'm thinking about trotting out Wan'Dale Robinson again instead of this bum just because
NFL's
it will piss me
leader.
off. It'll just piss me off less.
Target leader in the NFL.
In the 1 week I started,
Wan'Dale
go
Robinson.
for 5. Of course, thanks.
Bailey with $2 said BTJ should be offensive rookie of the year, but had to go against Jaden. Yeah, I mean, look, it's always going to be that way. If a decent quarterback is in contention, they're always going to win over the
Daniels
receiver,
has been on Stroud levels of good
and
from last year. So
BTJ's been a
great.
beast, but also Neighbors has missed 2 games, so I don't even know that he's going to statistically finish as the best receiver. He could. I'm not saying he can't finish better than Neighbors. I am slightly worried about Neighbors, as I told Pat earlier today, because of the Giants losing Andrew Thomas for the year. Neighbors, he likes to do some things downfield. Now he can do things all over the field, but if the plays don't have time to develop because the line is going to be trash now, that makes me a little worried just for the hard upside of Neighbors.
It's
still
slant to Wan'Dale time.
Just do slant to Neighbors so he can do the Odell thing where he catches the slant and then runs upfield 60 yards. I'll take that instead. The S box says trade Devonta Smith for Pickens or Cooper or no? For Pickens, maybe. I don't want to overreact to this.
The answer's
week with Russ
and, then yes. But
I'm sure it's not and. I'm guessing. I mean, this is Amari Cooper and George Pickens.
Granted, we saw Cooper get a decent target share, and obviously the first one, was right off the letters, which was hysterical.
Right.
But, he got the touchdown. And
that
Eagles offense has been so good, but it's just run so much through Saquon and AJ Brown.
Yeah, I mean, Devonta Smith's best games have come with A.J. Brown out of the lineup. And even those best games were only 17, 13. I think if you're really playing for, upside, go with George Pickens. I don't think I'd trade him for Amari Cooper at this point, but I don't hate the Pickens idea. And then we'll get to a couple questions from the regular chat. Let's see. Evco, similar question to one we had before. Start Tank, Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr., or Pickens at wide receiver 1 and 2. I think it's probably
Pickens and BTJ.
Yeah, it's Pickens and Thomas. So we're not going with our guys right now.
Nice flex.
A little less biased. I mean, she's not a robot. I didn't do that. So she's autonomous. It's not a flex if I didn't do it. Anyway,
chat's about to pop off.
This is a good question. Is Mark Andrews back? Bro, I don't fucking know at this point because he's still playing the same amount of snaps.
But the thing is like
the Ravens' offense is so good that like if he's getting these end zone looks.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think he's firmly back on the radar. Like I'm still like I have him and Dalton Kincaid in the same league because of course I do, and like I think I'm still starting Dalton Kincaid this week, just because we've seen that Andrews floor. But like if he got dropped in your league somehow, go get him. Go get him.
I'll say this as a Dalton Kincaid owner, I think I'd start Mark Andrews if I had both. But look,
interesting.
He's viable.
It's a 2-flex league, but neither of them are good enough to start in the flex. I was hoping I'm just going to start both of these guys. Right. And now they both are just mid as fuck.
Kincaid he's never heard of a touchdown in his life. So, I mean, he has one. It was against the Jags in week 3. And other than that, God, he's driving me nuts. It's brutal. All right, we'll go one more question here. Let's see.
We got an interesting trade here. Oh, yeah. Pull up the Alec Yang question here.
Okay.
We've got, I traded Kamara, Kupp, and Amari Cooper for Amon-Ra and A.J. Brown. Good deal. I think you got the two best players in the deal. So, yes. Even though you gave up a lot. Like, you gave up 3 good pieces. But A.J., we talked about it. A.J. Brown's been so good. And Amon-Ra, especially with Jamison Williams out, is just going to be peppered by targets the next 2 weeks, and there's no reason to believe that stops, and there's no reason not to believe in the Lions. Yeah, I really like this trade for you.
Yeah, I think you definitely cooked there. Kamara trending down, Cooper going to be fine with the Bills,
Kupp,
but like not going to be Amon-Ra or AJ
traded,
Brown.
question mark?
Kupp might get traded. I think Kupp's going to be good no matter where he goes. I mean, God forbid Kupp goes to the Chiefs. He might be even better somehow than he was in the Rams.
Oh dear.
But, that'd be a big issue. But yeah, you definitely won that deal. All right, guys, thank you for joining us once again for the AMA portion of the stream. But again, we'll be back here next week.
What about the ASMR portion?
Pat's fired. We'll see. I'll see you guys next week with a TBD co-host. It might just be my octopus friend here with the depression face. But thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.
I might not.
Dios.